Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have, as usual, a great show for you today. Because you know what? That's what we do. Anyway, folks, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard AVQ from Brooklyn, New York. Michael Rudden, welcome aboard as well. We have in the house Bruce Pollard. Good fly day, y'all. Yes, it is, Bruce. In the house as well, we have May Wood. How you doing, May Wood? We also have Lee Grant from Montgomery County and Aisha with a short link. Unless you tell us what that short link is all about, it won't be clicked. No one should click it unless Aisha kind of say, this is what this is all about. May Wood is in the house. We also have Eric Hayes from Kingwood, Atascocita. We also have, scrolling down, Joe. Joe is here from, where again? Los Angeles, California. I hope you remain cool and calm without the fire having too much of an effect, my dear sister. I hope all is well. We send you out there in California positive affirmations. Positive affirmations. I'm checking my link to make sure that we are all nice up and running and scrolling on all our phones. Yvette Avery Herod has just joined us, and Gaila Kunis has just joined us from Augusta, GW. Huh. GW? GW? Help me out. I know that's not a state. Is that in Australia or something? Let me know, Miss Gayla Kunis. I'd love to know. Oh, Georgia. Thank you. I was getting a little bit concerned. It's a W. Yeah, I was getting a little bit concerned. Say, we got somebody in maybe Australia. I don't know. Anyway, because we have listeners from Melanie Keelan is here from Barcelona, Spain. I love being all on every continent. You know what I mean? We love that. Anyway, folks, we got a great program for you today. But before I want to start, let me read some of Michael Rudnin's stuff first, and then I'll get started with some of my soliloquy here. But before we get started, CNBC, Trump sentenced to unconditional discharge in New York hush money case, avoiding jail. Trump ran for office to avoid prison for his many crimes and succeeded. This is the country we are in, where those at the very top can avoid 34 guilty counts of business fraud, where trials for inciting insurrection, willful retention of classified documents, and subordinate election fraud become mute, not mute, but moot. Excellent point. Truth out. World's richest 1% have already surpassed their carbon budget for 2025. A new report by Oxfam highlights the disproportionate role of the ultra wealthy in fueling the climate emergency. Governments need to stop pandering to the rich. Rich polluters must be made to pay for the havoc they are wreaking on our planet. Tax them, curb their emissions, and ban their excessive indulgences. Leaders who fail to act are choosing complicity. And believe it or not, the soliloquy is going to sort of be congruent to what you just wrote there, Michael, because that's such a true point that I want to raise up here. Carbon credits. America's richest 0.1% emit 62 times more than a typical U.S. household. We also have Joe who says, good burning afternoon, friends and family safe. Two small businesses of ex-employers burned. Hard to keep track though. I cry still for the birds, the animals. I know, because they're going to have to find refuge, and it's not going to be easy to find because of the massive burn area. More than likely, they're going to have to go over ridge after ridge further inland away from the ocean, and that climate is quite a bit different. Let's see. Para ver, Joe also said, as a waitress, James Woods was the actual worst, most smug and rude person I ever served. Ever, by the way. Oh, I never knew that. I never thought Woods would turn out to be such a right? Let's see what else we have here. What else we have here? Melanie Keelan says, "Happy Friday, folks." And let's see. Thank you for the grounded, stay calm advice. Exactly, Joe. That's what we got to do, baby. Bridge MCP is in the house. She said, Yvette snow day. Weird weather. Snowed every day, but two here since before Thanksgiving. Wow. That means, it first gets pretty, then it gets, you know what. Bridge MCP says, Trump was never going to get jail time. We all knew that, but he is still a felon and funny. US is on list not to allow felons in, but hey, you can be president. I know, but you know what? There are places where felons can't do certain things in other countries. So we'll see which countries try to enforce Trump as a convicted felon with 34 counts, and he would be convicted of so much more. The criminal in chief would be. Anyway, folks, finally, and I really wanted to play this yesterday, but I didn't have it prepared and ready to go. But this is Carter was a great president, but he wasn't a pompous president. He wasn't a president that went ahead and told folks, I did this, I did that, I did that. He made the policies speak for themselves. It makes the policies speak for themselves. Oh, wait, did I see something about snow in Georgia? Let's see. It looks like it'll hang around a couple of days. Let me see. Did you get snow, Yvette? Oh, after PDR Posse having a snow day. I didn't see that one, Yvette. So you are having a snow day. You know what? Are you going to take some of that snow, put it in a cup, and throw some honey and sugar and milk on it? I did. I was so excited to see snow in Houston. I didn't even bother with putting all the amenities in it. I just started to eat the snow. I think by then it had rained a lot, so the air was probably cleaned enough of the carbon and all the sulfides in the air. I hope. But I did eat that snow. Patrick is in the house, says meow. Hey, Patrick. Great to see you here, my brother. I don't see E2247 yet. Let me see if I don't want to miss anybody before I get started. The snow is dirty, Egberto, says Eric Hayes. Well, Eric, I hope I don't get sick. Don't eat yellow snow. I've never seen yellow snow. I guess my part isn't polluted enough to have the yellow snow. All right, anyway, let's get busy. Let's go ahead and play Carter. I revere Carter. I revere the guy. And from the time he associated himself with Habitat for Humanity, I've been a donor to both Habitat for Humanity and the Carter Center. And the reason why is because these are such programs that you can actually see. That you can, hey, put it up on the thing so we can see it, our beautiful Yvette. I want to see all the snow on your porch. Anyway, check this out. I love giving to organizations. I can't give as I used to before. Hey, activist journalism. You have to scrump and scrump and scrump, but I still make sure to make a notion to give. But so that's a good one. Let me tell you things that you should donate to, in my humble opinion. Habitat for Humanity, as well as you that's terrible, girl. Habitat for Humanity and the Carter Center. The Carter Center is an excellent organization, over 3,000 employees. And of course, most of those employees are overseas in villages, etc. And they, for all practical purposes, run things locally. Great organization. And of course, Habitat for Humanity, we can actually see the homes that they build here in Houston and everywhere else that they exist. It's a great organization that actually builds the home people live in. Many a times, the people who are going to live in those homes come over and help build it as well. Uh, Let's see. You give time now. You just donate differently. Thank you so kindly for that kudos there, my dear brother Magner. But yeah, folks. So it's important, right? I the organizations that I give to tentatively, but I'm always taken aback is the Red Cross, because I don't know if it's still the case, but the CEO of the Red Cross was making $500,000 a year. I just couldn't see uh, that the organization should have an executive structure where the CEO makes that kind of money when we have most of the people working for the Red Cross on a volunteer basis, etc. I just couldn't see it. I just couldn't see it. All right, Yvette has it on. Oh, wow, that's beautiful, Yvette. Do I have permission to show that, Yvette? Oh, well, you have it on Facebook, so I imagine that's implicit permission, right? Let's take a look at Yvette's very snowy area. This is beautiful. I know it may be cold, Yvette, but hell, it's beautiful. Check this out, guys. Is that beautiful or what? It almost, if you had some Christmas lights out, like if it were in December, that would be good. And folks, that's Atlanta, Georgia. That is Atlanta, Georgia. This isn't very common in Atlanta, Georgia to see this much snow. All right, so check that out, guys. That is beautiful. Anyway, let's move on. Thank you for that, Yvette. You kind of put a good feeling for this storm in my body. Anyway, let's get busy and play that Carter piece that I spoke about, and then we'll take it on the other side. A lot of people watched the funeral for former President Carter today, and I thought it was one of the most substantive farewells for a president that I've seen. More importantly, I think that's the reason because Carter has always been underappreciated. And because he has been underappreciated, only the great things that he did outside of the presidency are the things that people looked at. Now, personally, I was too young during the Carter presidency to really understand what he did in depth. But I remember, I started really getting deeply into politics, starting with Reagan, even then as a neophyte, but learning a whole lot about the presidencies up and until Obama and beyond, it really taught a lot. In fact, as I did a lot of my studying with Obama and Bush 1, Bush 2, etc., because do remember, Bush 1 is the one who invaded Panama, the country of my birth. I learned a lot about Carter during those times, right? Because after all, Carter is the one who signed the Panama Canal Treaty that gave the canal back to Panama. I lived less than a mile from the canal, right? I am a product of the canal, right? My ancestors, the Panamanians of Caribbean descent, built the canal. So I understand it and understand the greatness of him coming to Panama and getting that and doing the right thing. But a lot of folks don't understand that there was so much more that he did. And at last, at his memorial, we had somebody that said it is time to dispel the myth that he was more accomplished outside of the presidency than he was within the presidency. When he was within the presidency, the magnitude of the things that this guy did was that of an impactful president. I want you to listen to what his deputy, his former White House domestic affairs advisor had to say, Stuart Eizenstat, because I hadn't seen anybody just sit back and enumerate in a short span of time all that President Carter had actually accomplished. Listen here, and then we'll take it on the other side.
As we lay our 39th president to rest, it's time to redeem his presidency and also lay to rest the myth that his greatest achievements came only as a former president. The test of American presidents is not the number of years they serve, but the duration of their accomplishments. By this measure, Jimmy Carter was among the most consequential one-term presidents in American history. His intellect, prodigious work habits, discipline, and mastery of details were crucial to his success at home and abroad. President Carter parked politics at the Oval Office door to do what he believed was the right thing, taking controversial challenges on, regardless of the political consequences, and frankly, there were many. Much of his agenda passed with bipartisan support, a quaint notion in today's hyper-polarized politics. Independent surveys indicated he had one of the highest success rates in passing his major legislation of any American president. And he was remarkably accessible to the press and to the American people. This president from the deepest part of the Deep South championed civil rights, appointing more people of color and women to senior executive positions and judgeships than all previous 38 presidents before him. He created the Department of Education and dramatically increased funding for low and moderate income students. And we can thank him for all the ethics in government laws, comprehensive civil service reform, the creation of FEMA to coordinate natural disaster relief and rebuilding that remain crucially important today, and we see it in Los Angeles. Jimmy Carter was also the greatest environmental president since Theodore Roosevelt, adding 80 million acres in Alaska to the national park system, and his Global 2000 report forecasts climate change. His energy bills were critical to move our country from dependence on foreign oil to energy security. We are now, as a result, the largest oil and gas producer in the world. He provided the first incentives for conservation and inaugurated the era of clean energy and symbolized it with solar panels he installed on the White House roof. Underappreciated at the time, but now widely recognized by Republicans and Democrats alike, President Carter was the great deregulator, winning legislative battles to loosen the regulatory bonds and shackles on airlines, thereby democratizing air travel, on trucking and rails, therefore helping our supply chains be more efficient, telecommunications leading to the cable TV era, and even the beer industry, which encouraged local craft beers. And he did so without compromising health and safety. These laid the foundations for today's innovative economy. Nothing better embodies President Carter than how he dealt with the inflation that beleaguered the nation under three presidents, two Republican, Nixon and Ford, and himself, during the 1970s. Over the objection of all of his advisors, he chose Paul Volcker to lead the Federal Reserve, knowing in advance that Volcker's tough monetary policy would raise interest rates and unemployment because Paul told him that, and would do so in a presidential election year. You take care of the economy, Paul. I'll take care of the politics. Inflation indeed dropped like a rock after he left office and remained low for decades. Abroad, Jimmy Carter laid the building blocks for a better world. He was the first president to make human rights a priority for U.S. foreign policy. And this led directly to the release of thousands of political prisoners in Latin America and stimulated them to a lasting democratic transition. He ushered in a new era of hemispheric relations with the Panama Canal treaties, the toughest legislative battle of his presidency. He uniquely combined the soft power of human rights, championing freedom for the communist East Bloc countries and tripling the emigration of Soviet Jews. He combined that with hard power, rebuilding America's military strength after its post-Watergate decline. He negotiated a major nuclear arms treaty with the Soviets, while at the same time initiated every single weapons system that came online in the 1980s. Those new weapons helped end the Cold War. He normalized relations with China, and even his critics applauded his tough measures after the Soviets invaded Afghanistan. Jimmy Carter's most lasting achievement, and the one I think he was most proud of, was to bring the first peace to the Middle East through the greatest act of personal diplomacy in American history, the Camp David Accords. For 13 days and nights, he negotiated with Israel's Menachem Begin and Egypt's Anwar Sadat, personally drafting more than 20 peace proposals and shuttling them between the Israeli and Egyptian delegations. And he saved the agreement at the 11th hour, and it was the 11th hour, by appealing to Begin's love of his grandchildren. For the past 45 years, the Egypt-Israel has never been violated and laid the foundation for the Abraham Accord. On the other side of the ledger was Iran. Jimmy Carter did not lose Iran, the Shah did. But the hostage crisis was a major factor in denying him a second term, despite his support for the Shah, because he placed the safe return of the hostages above his own political fortunes. He took full responsibility for the failure of the hostage rescue mission and worked tirelessly, even after his bitter re-election defeat to Ronald Reagan, securing their release on the last day of his presidency. In the end, Jimmy Carter taught all of us how to live a life fulfilled with faith and service. He said, "I have one life to live. I feel like God wants me to do the best I can do with it, to let me live my life so that it will be meaningful." Well, Mr. President, you've more than achieved that goal. He may not be a candidate for Mount Rushmore, but he belongs in the foothills of making the U.S. stronger and the world safer. Jimmy Carter has earned his place in heaven, but just as he was free with sometimes unsolicited advice for his presidential successors, the Lord of all creation should be ready for Jimmy's recommendations on how to make God's realm a more peaceful place.
So yes, the guy was stubborn, though, that he was. But people who know what they want to do and know what they're doing is the right thing, the moral thing. You have a tendency to be, to be sort of anal, right? So I thought it was apropos the joke that Eisenstadt made at the end with, "Hey, God, Carter's going to kind of give you a little bit of trouble now." So, but look, it was just great to see that those who listened got a chance to see that this was actually an impactful president, a president we should be proud of, and a president that many others should try to emulate in their post-presidency, that so far none of them has. None of them so far. But maybe this kind of a send-off will encourage at least one of them to do the right thing.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form.
And that is absolutely so. That is absolutely so. Anyway, hey, Paul Fleming, thank you for reminding me, for pointing that out. President Biden ends his term with a sturdy labor market after the U.S. added a surprising 256,000 jobs in December. With all the ups and downs in the economy now, that puts President Biden at 16 million plus jobs. Guess what? Let's get out my handy book. As I see it, Class Warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. Let's see where Biden stands now. I wrote this book a few years ago where I enumerated the job count for different presidents. Check this out. The president that has gotten the most jobs in his 2 terms was whom again? Bill Clinton with 23.1 million jobs. Guess what? Biden had one term, and he got 16 million jobs. Ronald Reagan had 2 terms. He didn't beat Clinton. Clinton beat Ronald Reagan by 7 million jobs because you know what? Reagan only had 16 million jobs created. So let's see, who are the big job creators in America? It turns out they are Bill Clinton, Joe Biden. Also, big job creator was Lyndon Johnson. All of these are the ones over 10 millions. Jimmy Carter. All of them share one thing. They're all Democrats. The only one that beat any of them was, of course, Ronald Reagan, which came in a distant 5th. Okay? So let's get history right. Just like they've always gotten Carter's history wrong because of the permanence and the pervasive lies that you get from the, what again? The pervasive lies you get from the right wing. What we are hoping to do, not what we're hoping to do, what we are doing is letting folks know the truth. So yes, folks, no matter how you look at it, you can if you don't even if you don't include the pandemic, Biden lays waste to the employment created by Donald Trump. Let's go ahead and make that one assertion clear. Okay? Let's make that one assertion clear. So again, from my book, and you should consider getting this because this book is still very relevant, even though it ends pretty much with Obama. Okay? But again, the biggest job creator in our country ever, bar none, was Bill Clinton. And on a per year basis, the highest one on a per year is now going to be Biden. On a per term, not per year, per term is now going to be Biden. So, folks, there is rhetoric and then there is reality you can actually get. Numbers are out there for you to see. Now, I just went, let me see if I need to get to some of you before I move on to the last video. Let's see. Oh, let's remember also today, officially, the president that many of you have elected, that 49.8% of you have elected, is now a convicted felon. It's not like we didn't know that. He's a convicted felon. He is a sexual abuser that a judge has said is tantamount to being a rapist. He is also a thief. He is also a multiplied liar and much more. And that's who we have to look forward to. So we just buried, next to Donald Trump, we just buried a saint. And now we have to live with what this guy giveth. We have to live with what this guy giveth. Anyway, let's continue this real quickly. I want to go ahead and play. After I gave all that factual information that everybody could see and look up on their own, I had a caller. Let me go ahead and play that video and then we'll take it on the other side.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.
Let's go to Brother Bard.
Okay, Egberto, good morning. I want to say that I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move Carter down in the worst presidents list. He's going down from number 4 to number 5 now. And I'm going to move Clinton up to number 2. So you're going to have Biden as the worst, Clinton's number 2, George W. Bush is number 3, Obama's number 4, and then Carter will be number 5 on the worst presidents in the history of the United States.
All right. I love that you're at least consistent, You're consistent. But you know what? Go ahead.
The other thing was I noticed that, what's her name? Kamala, she was very upset that Obama was talking to Trump. So she looked like she had ate a sour pickle there and shot them at the death stare. And so I'm glad that she is going to be fading away and we will never have to hear from her or see her again because she will be gone into the dustbin of history.
I don't think she's going to go away. In fact, I think she has a lot more to offer. In fact, I want more women. And she said she has a lot to offer. I think more than ever, we need women. When I listen to your wordiology, the way you think, with the supremacy nodal that you have, right? Based on who you like, based on the way you analyze reality, it just tells me that we just need to see powerful women take charge so that people like you, right, who simply have and I say this with respect, since you still have that white supremacist notion in the way you think, that when you see actual women, white women, black women, Latino women, Asian women come out and really excel, because one of the reasons they have to be so good is because folks like yourself have never allowed them to sprout because of your fear of their success, right? So what you do, I will say, my dear brother Brad, is you do something that has happened to me. I wrote a book called Tribulations of an Afro-Latino Caribbean Man. And the reason I wrote it is I work hard to be truthful. I work hard to know stuff. And the reason I work hard to know stuff is because I understand the judgment and that how much harder someone like myself, Kamala, women in the aggregate have to work because we have a system that has been controlled by people that think like you. But the good thing about it is, as opposed to having to be quiet about it now, we have reached to the point where we can actually say it and tell you in your face or in your ears how things really are. But thank you, Bart. You have allowed me to say so much so often.
The Democrats are the ones that are done with Kamala. And if you want to know how great women are, just ask those people that live in L.A. that their houses have burned down.
Man, you keep putting your foot in. You keep putting your foot in your mouth. Have a great day, Bard. This morning on my KPFT 90.1 FM program, Politics Done Right on Pacifica Network, one of my regular callers called in. This guy, I want to hear his point of view. It is clear that this guy is a white supremacist. It is clear that this guy is also a misogynist and a sexist. And of course, a racist as well. Now, with this one call, he didn't lay all out. But let me preface. I ran a segment of the funeral from Carter's funeral yesterday, where finally somebody completely enumerated Carter's presidential successes, which were many. I also included in the narrative the fact that if we had listened to Carter 40-something years ago, we would have been ahead within the environmental movement, within the green energy movement by over 40 years. Do you know what can be accomplished in 40 years? And I gave all the enumerations as far as what Carter did and how important he was for America. And had we not had a Reagan, had we not had a troglodyte that instead of enhancing what Carter did, removed solar panels, talked about simply drill, just like the troglodyte that we are, the troglodyte, not only a troglodyte he is, but the convicted felon that is going to be installed on January 20th. Instead, if we had just followed Carter's lead, we would have been so ahead and we would have been the leader in the world that would make us ensure that the climate change that is occurring today would not have occurred. Again, because as the largest fossil fuel burner, as somebody that, as a country that puts the most into the air, then we could have done something about it. And we gave the full explanation. And this guy calls in, and the only thing he could say about Carter is, well, I guess instead of being one of the worst, he's a little bit less than one of the worst now, but he's still horrendous and terrible. And then he allowed his sexist, racist type of narrative to come out. Like I said, in his segment, he didn't let it all out, but this guy is a regular caller, and his former statements precedes him. I just want you to listen to how we handled it at KPFT 90.1 FM. Check this out. Now, let me tell you, we try to educate, we try to inform, we try to enlighten with the Politics Done Right program. There are some people, however, who have programmed themselves that they prefer to be willingly ignorant, because being willingly ignorant fulfills or quotes their own insecurities. We can't do anything for people like that. But you know what? For every single person that you hear, like Bart, for every single person that you see limits their intelligence, limits their knowledge like him, there are those who were exposed to the same information that he was and believed it, but because they are rational and choose not to be willfully ignorant, will actually change their minds based on new information. And that is who we are intent on reaching. We are intent on using the backward troglodytic manner of the Barts of the world to convince others how self-defacing and how ignorant that would actually be if they maintain that status. So again, as I told him at the end, thank you, Bart, for giving us the opportunity to continue enlightenment and to show people what they want to ensure they never become. Exactly right. I know you guys have noticed the mistake that I made in the calculation. I had to put this together real quickly before the show, and I flipped the end and so forth as I was putting the segments together. But I think you guys in your minds can put it together. I'll clean this up before I make the final copy and put it out in the blog at Substack and everywhere else. I'll make sure and get that all cleaned up. Anyway, we have a limerick. We have a limerick before I get to my next soliloquy, and this is from our whom again? Our resident poet laureate, who is the one and only Tom Zarnik. Anyway, let's go ahead and get with it. It goes as follows. I haven't read it yet, so this is my first read. Jimmy Carter, 1 century young, was laid to rest. Some say as president he was not among the very best. But politics is often a game of chance, accomplishments subject to circumstance. As a human being, Jimmy C was second to none. His work for humanity was never done. His life a success if strength of character's the test. With President Carter as our leader, America's were blessed. He set the bar for being a star. Only hope with next in line will be equally impressed. Wow. Wow. Again, you know what? You should just tape what I say about how good your limericks are, Mr. Zornick. You should just say, let me put it out there, and Egberto, let me just stamp how Egberto is going to love my limerick. That was ace, brother. That was ace. Hey guys, all of you, give brother Zornick a big hand, a big wave in the chat. All right, Bridge MCP says Egberto Willis. For the MAGA against trans people, at least 373 bills attacking transgender healthcare, usually for minors, were introduced in state houses over the past 2 years, according to the Trans Legislation Tracker. Add to this campaign promises by incoming President Donald Trump to add child sexual mutilation that were further amplified by $200 million in anti-trans political advertising this election cycle. By June, the Supreme Court expected to decide if states can unilaterally ban gender affirming medicine for trans minors. So, how many are getting it? The findings published on Monday in a peer reviewed research letter in JAMA Pediatrics offers a crucial reality check. Their findings just 0.017%. 0.017% of youth were coded as trans and received puberty blockers, and just 0.037% were trans and access hormone therapy. All told, that's about 1/20th of 1%. There's a lot of attention being spent on the issue that only affects a very, very, very tiny part of the population. And again, what that does is because it drives the right wing crazy, they know they can control their people by giving them something to worry about that is inconsequential as they rape them, as they take the value from them. That's what it's all about, Bridge. You know it, I know it, and those who are not gullible, those who have a modicum of a mind, understand that the trans issue was never really an issue. Some people have never run across a trans person in their lives. Anyway, let's get to what Bridge wants to put on the screen real quickly here. And it says as follows. It says, why do they call us the left? Because if you take away all the fascist corporate sycophants, warmongers, racists, and traitors, we are all what? Left. That's a fun one, Bridge. I love that one. That is a very funny one. Anyway, folks, continuing with the program. Is there anything important that I missed that needs to be read out? If it is, just repost it again, and I'll be sure to do it. Let me go with my first soliloquy. Let's see. Is there an Ask Gilberto anything tomorrow? There was supposed to be one tomorrow, but guess what happened? Houston Peace and Justice Center is having our planning board meeting. So I can't have it tomorrow, and that means we are now, the next time is the 17th. If you guys don't mind having it on the 17th and then immediately 2 weeks thereafter, I can do that. But right now, as it turns out, I can't because of this meeting that I'm having. Okay, let's continue here. I want to make a statement about the fires. I feel the pain of all of those who've been burnt out. I feel the pain that they are feeling because I know what it's like to lose quite a bit. I do. But I want folks to understand something. A lot of what's happening in the hurricanes in Florida, the inability to get insurance, a lot of what's happening in California, in Pacific Palisades, and these areas that are burnt out completely is the fault of politicians that we have elected, not over the last year, not over the last 10 years, but the consistency of electing neoliberal politicians, conservative politicians. And I need to explain that in detail. Even as I praise Carter for, let's say, deregulating the airlines in such a manner that airline tickets could fall, in that regards, that was a good thing. That the narrative of deregulation being a good thing, even if it's coming out of Carter, is the wrong narrative. It's the improper narrative. There are two things here. We constantly buy into the fallacy. We constantly buy into the fallacy that somehow we think we are going to do well. So well that we don't want to tax those people that are doing extremely well because that may be us. Well, let me tell you something for all of you to understand. It will never be you. It will never be you. You have to be invited into the club. I don't care what you invent. I don't care what you create. When we're talking about making the billions, you have to be invited into the club. Let me give you a simple example here. We have a lot of influencers now that have become millionaires, again, because they get a whole lot of eyes and they start to get people looking at their eyes, etc. But guess what's the magic here? None of them own their platforms. And if any one of them get out of hand, their platforms can be removed immediately because they don't have agency. Why am I going there? Back to the fires. Many of those wealthy people in those wealthy zip codes, one of the reasons that you have a deprived fire department, One of the reasons that you can't build your water reservoirs. One of the reasons that you cannot invoke regulations that can stop these fires from burning homes unabated is because people don't want to pay higher taxes based on the kind of living that they want. And people don't want to have regulations that, yeah, increases the prices of the homes, etc., which would prevent these realities. Look, it is not hard. It is not hard to build a home resistant to embers. Because let's do the science of these fires. The science of these fires are as follows. A fire gets started in a canyon or in a mountain. It gets very hot and it starts to burn everything around. As those embers, fire embers mean bits of charcoal that emanates out of this fire, the wind picks these up and it blows it across the fields, and it blows it and it on every single rooftop, every single crevice that is actually wood or fire burning or combustible. This is a science now. And all of these embers then create flammable areas that can burn. Now, here's the interesting thing, right? My home in Sabanitas, Panama, Colón, Panama, is not in a fire zone because we're in a place that rains a lot, but it's in a place where wood rots easily. So our machines, our homes, my home was built of concrete. Even when we had a fire in my sister's bedroom, we had in Panama, because my father worked for the Canal Zone, we had a home in the Canal Zone that was a substandard piece of crap home that the American government gave us in that apartheid state called the Canal Zone. And then we had our real home in Sabanitas, Colón, Panama. Okay? That home that was well built in Sabanitas, Colón, Panama was made of concrete the walls went up to the ceiling as they should, and the top of the house had a tin covering. So there were no real exposed wood on the outside that would pretty much have caught and fire. So where your fire normally begins is within the homes in these houses. And we did have a fire once when we were in Arco Iris. One of our lamps malfunctioned and it got a short and it started a fire. And that fire burned and burned till eventually people saw it and they called the thing. But guess what happened? That fire was restricted to that room because that room was all concrete. It had the wooden door, but by the time there was so much smoke in there, it extinguished the fire, right? And of course, as soon as they opened the door, it blew back and the fire got up, but they put it out. But we only had one damaged bedroom. One damaged bedroom. My point is this. Regulations in California, in all these areas. Think about all these wealthy people's homes that burned like paper. And you know why it burned like paper? Because it was made like paper. It was cheaply made, but expensively cost. That's capitalism. You get away with making things look pretty on the facade, but it is made of paper. My father came here, and came here in the first time he came here in I think it was 86, 87 or so, and I had just gotten my first home, and we were taking him around a whole lot of big homes that were being built. Ours was a little house, and we were taking him to the mansions in this area. And we went, and a friend of mine, he saw the houses, and all my father did was complain about. I didn't know in the United States they build homes out of wood and this material. He said, "What about a fire?" He's a fireman, It's so easy to burn these things down, huh? Oh God. And that's what he thought. And we weren't even talking about a fire zone. And then a friend of mine, a principal of the school, not a principal, I think he was a band director of the school, he invited us to dinner. And he had bought this big home. And it was one of these homes in the same area my father said. And my father looked at the guy and said, "Why do they make the homes here out of wood and paper?" And I slapped him. I'm like, "Come on, huevo, don't do that. No hablas así, man." But his thing was, these homes are built of crap. And you pay, and then he would say at that time those homes were like $300,000. And he's like, "Wait a minute. And those things cost that amount of money? No, in Panama, that would be giveaway house. My point is this: there are regulations that you could have had, but that's not what happens in over here. People don't want regulations, and people don't want to pay taxes. And when you have a fire like this here, they wonder, why didn't the politicians do what they needed to do? Because you didn't want them to do what they needed to do. If I run on a ticket that says I am going to ensure that when we rebuild Pacific Palisades, that homes must have metal roofing, however designed. There must be no exposed wood or flammable material around the areas, and that you must have a 20-foot surrounding the homes of flammable vegetation. I wouldn't get elected. But if you want to build in a fire zone, that's what's required. In a hurricane zone, if we said you have to build outside of the floodplain, and if you're in the floodplain, you have to build up 2 feet above the last flood, and the building must be wind resistant to 140 miles, they're going to say, no, we don't want to do that. It's pay me now or pay me later. But let me tell you what actually happens. What actually happens, and the reason they don't want the regulations, because if people knew that having these regulations would make sure that instead of paying $5,000 a year for home insurance, you would only pay maybe $1,500 to $2,000 a year in home insurance, and that the accumulative savings in insurance would more than cover the increased cost of your home. That makes sense. But that's not what happens in America. The capitalist doesn't want that to happen. The capitalist wants to make sure that he can make that home seem cheap to you. The home is going to seem cheap to you. But guess what? That cheap home, that cheap home isn't all that cheap when disaster hits. And ultimately, with climate change, which again, because we don't want regulations, continue to get worse as we do not stop companies from doing what they're doing to make and exacerbate climate change. In effect, what they're asking all of us to do is we inherently pay the cost for everything. We buy homes cheaply, relatively cheaply, where all the profits go towards the builder, the capitalist. When the hurricane or the windstorm or the tornado or the fire or the earthquake comes, we also pay the price to recover. And you may say, well, there's disaster aid. FEMA is going to give people a lot of money. That may be true. But guess who pays FEMA? We do. So ultimately, by not having regulations, by not having taxation, appropriately so, we are subsidizing the 1% through our taxes and through the monies we pay because we don't have regulation, which allows them to bill as they please. It's a vicious circle where the middle class and the poor pays for everything, and the tiny 1% that can do as they please get away with it. And we just let it happen. And we just let it happen. So I feel for my brothers and sisters that went through the big hurricanes this year. I feel for my brothers and sisters in Florida, my brothers and sisters in North Carolina, and now my brothers and sisters in California. But let me tell you, we are going to have to wise up. We are going to have to start learning math. We're going to have to realize that regulations may cause a home to increase in price. Regulations may, taxation may take some more money out of our pocket. But in the long term, it saves us money because instead of paying that money consistently and constantly to the capitalist plutocrats that build and rebuild our home and that pollute our air, etc., the extra price that we pay in regulation, the extra price we pay in regulation, we will recover in the savings that we don't have to pay insurance company, the savings where we don't have to rebuild. And you know who hates that? The capitalist. Because their goal isn't to save you money or get you a good deal or make something out of you. You are a cog. You are a widget. So when they talk about we don't want taxation, that's not for you. That's they want to keep everything. When they talk about we don't want regulation, that's not for you. That is so that they can flip. But folks, I can see that I've extended my reach. I've gone a little bit too far on time, so I've got to close it up here. But I'm going to close it this way and say this. Folks, we have to get smart. We have to not just think of what they're putting in front of us. We have to think through different levels of indirection. We have got to learn how to think. We have got to learn critical thinking. One of the reasons they don't want critical theory, critical thinking, civics, and all these things taught is because an intelligent person will elect the right people. And if we elect the right people, we would have a fair distribution of the income and wealth in this country. But the way things are right now, you are just a cog in the wheel. You are just a sucker. You are just an indentured servant. And at worst, you are an antiseptic slave. Folks, I got to get out of here. But before I go, I want to ask you all, those of you who have the wherewithal to please become supporters of our program. You can do that, first of all, by becoming a Patreon. That's politicsdoneright.com/Patreon, politicsdoneright.com/Patreon. But if you really, really want to join the fold, read all our books free of charge, special special podcasts, etc. A lot of stuff we give you. Please become a paid subscriber of our newsletter. You can become a paid subscriber of our Substack newsletter by going to politicsdoneright.com/newsletter, or just go to egberto.substack.com. It will get you to the same place. But politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Please subscribe. We need approximately 2,000 more subscribers. Need some help? I can't get part-time help until I'm able to pay for some part-time help. I don't believe in just having somebody doing stuff and not compensated. So if you see the value in what we're doing here, I want to ask you so kindly to become a supporter of this network. Remember, it's not only the video program that we do here on all the different internet channels, but we're also on air. We're also in books. We're also writing for newspapers, articles, and we do everything to promote this message and to try to help be a part of the Progressive Information Network. So please support us however you can. I've just put the 2 links in the stream. Please be a great supporter. Thank you so kindly. Some memberships were gifted by Patrick and received by Caledon City Naive. Thank you so kindly, guys. I couldn't do any of this without you. Thank you so kindly. Anyway, folks, I got to get out of here. Let me put that link in there again for the newsletter, politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.